The Hawkesbury and Blue Mountains residents are facing extraordinary increases in insurance costs, to a point that many cannot afford it because of the increasing frequency and severity of fires and floods. And I want to talk about how this sort of scheme, if it's implemented effectively, if it proves to achieve the objectives that are held with it, and I have to say I don't think it is the only step that needs to be taken in terms of helping people manage insurance. You know, we focus a lot on the cleaning up afterwards in a disaster, but not as much on the planning for it and the preparation for it. In terms of floods, many insurers in the country do not insure people in the Hawkesbury. They're sitting on the Hawkesbury River, one of the plains most likely to flood, always has flooded, always will flood. And insurers either don't offer insurance, or if they do, they price it so people simply can't afford it. During the floods last year, I spoke to a lot of people about this, and some had seen their payments jump from $3,000 a year to $30,000 a year for just a typical suburban home. Now, that's a tenfold increase in insurance. And when that happens, people have to make a choice. You know, when they bought these houses, they could afford insurance. But as the years and decades have gone on, those prices have gone up, and they're just being priced out of the market. You know, I've heard people say, oh, why do they live there if they can't buy insurance? Well, they could buy insurance when they moved there. For many people, that is the case. The historical homes on the Hawkesbury, which were built in the 1800s, they've survived many floods. The stone buildings can be hosed down, but the internals do have to be replaced. And residents have talked to me about why can't they have a flood insurance that doesn't cover the replacement of the entire house, because they're confident their house is going to stand. But what they do want to see is something that they can afford to help cover the cost of the internals. It might be $50,000, it might be $70,000, but for that they can get new kitchens put in, they can replace the flooded gyprock, they can get the carpets done. All the things that they couldn't remove when the flood was coming, a small insurance package will give them the opportunity to do that. As it stands, people have had to save up and use their savings or extend mortgages on homes to do it. It's been an expensive business. What they are doing, though, is making themselves more resilient, and they could do with help to achieve that. They're replacing things like putting kitchens on wheels so that they can actually wheel it out. They're doing fittings that are easily removed, light fittings. They're not using timber or gyprock on the walls, but they're using modular blocks with render or other alternatives that are a lot easier to hose out as the flood waters recede. What we need, on top of talking about reinsurance, is a place where we need to empower people to be able to be more resilient to these floods. And that applies to fires and it applies to storms, it applies to cyclones, it applies to any of the natural disasters that our communities across the country face. Greater access to information for people who want to retrofit their home for flood or bushfire, and greater information for people who are constructing. The residents of homes that are more modern are feeling pressured. They're concerned that no one tells them that they're not going to be able to get insurance when they're buying a house. Funnily enough, some real estate agents just neglect to mention that bit. It's not until they're talking to mortgage lenders that they start to see some of the complications, and even then, if it isn't apparent to people, often until it's too late. Not being able to get flood insurance of any type understandably makes people worry about the resale value of their homes, and they do deserve some sense of hope. This parliament should be working not just for Northern Australia, but for those living in the floodplains of the Hawkesbury and across the country. And more than anything, it needs to be a government-led conversation with the insurers about this. My community is very keen to have that. We have started discussions with the Insurance Council about what it could look like, how it could work. using our region as a model. Now, where will those discussions get? Well, I can't predict. But what I do know is that people want to live in the Hawkesbury, and people have lived there for thousands of years, and settlement has been there since the 1800s. And people know that there needs to be a way to help them, to help themselves, to be more resilient. I'll continue to work with my community to do this. I live in one of the most disaster-prone places in the country. Floods, fires, storms, we get all three with regular monotony, and it always does damage. Deputy Speaker, in terms of the fire issues, I don't know if reinsurance is going to be the answer there, but I think that's another aspect we absolutely have to look at. In the Blue Mountains, people have been through a number of fires in the last few years. The huge fires in 2013 where my house burnt down, and 200 of us were told in a room, you are pretty much all underinsured to rebuild your homes to the new standards. The insurers knew a couple of days after the fires that we were underinsured. We didn't know it until we were told, and people started talking to builders about the cost of rebuilding to the new bushfire standards. So it isn't enough just to say Northern Australia needs reinsurance, a reinsurance pool, although we'll be supporting that. What we do need to see is a much more continent-wide approach to this. Every single bushfire community, every single one, is going to find itself underinsured to rebuild homes because of the standards that have come in following the Canberra bushfires. Homes cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more depending on your bushfire attack level rating. This is not something you can change, but what happens is, even though you build a more resilient home, the insurers don't recognise that you've built in resilience, and they just charge you based on the cost of your home. So people are not getting recognised for the work that they're doing, whether it's putting in sprinkler systems, whether it's putting in shutters, whether, in my case, it's having a roof which looks like anybody else's corrugated roof, but actually has 6 or 7 layers to reduce the chance of any embers getting inside. These are the things that, as a parliament, we need to have a conversation with insurers so that the investment people are making to protect themselves better is reflected in the insurance that they pay. That's the only way that communities like mine in the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury and bushfire areas are going to be able to afford insurance. And if they can't, it's this place that will be asked to solve the problem. So let's get on the front foot. Don't wait until we have another 10 bushfires where people are underinsured. Let's take steps to make sure that we are ahead of this and working with communities, but more importantly, working with insurers so that we can help our communities to help themselves.